You gonna deliver mail or justice today, boy? The judge chuckled, loud enough for the courtroom to hear. The gavel hadn't even dropped before the stench of racism filled the air. Marcus Hale didn't flinch. He stood still in his pressed postal uniform, eyes calm, but searing with intelligence that not even the robe behind the bench recognized. His gaze lingered not on the judge's face, but on the flag behind him, the one that still promised liberty and justice for all, even if only some believed in it. The courtroom in Santa Rita, California, was like many others Marcus had sat in over the last 9 months, sterile, heavy with pretense, and rigged in favor of men like Judge Kenneth Whitlow. The man was infamous behind closed doors, loud in the locker room, subtle in the courtroom, known for long sentences and short tolerance, especially when the defendant's skin didn't match his own. But today wasn't like the other hearings Marcus had infiltrated. Today, he was the one being judged, or so they thought. The assignment had come down from D.C. in a plain folder, Operation Paper Veil. DOJ's Civil Rights Division had been building a case for over 2 years. There were whispers juries mysteriously all white, sentencing disparities, cases thrown out for black defendants based on demeanor. No hard proof, just patterns. But Marcus was good with patterns. It's what made him perfect for deep cover. He didn't expect the sting to get this personal. Whitlow leaned forward from the bench, smirking. "You got lost, Mr. Hale? This ain't no delivery route." A few chuckles rippled from the back bench's law clerks, bailiffs. Marcus scanned their faces, registering each reaction like entries in a file. "No, Your Honor," he said evenly. "Just here to witness justice at work." Whitlow raised an eyebrow. "Well, it must be casual Tuesday at the department then. Next time wear a tie." More laughter. Marcus didn't smile. He couldn't afford to. His partner, ADA Layla Granger, sitting in the prosecution's chair, avoided his gaze. That was part of the act. She'd been briefed on his true role barely, just enough to keep her out of trouble when this blew open. If it blew open, she looked as tired of the game as he felt. This wasn't about a traffic violation or small-time fraud. Marcus had uncovered something far more sinister. A chain of manipulated verdicts, asset seizures from vulnerable black families, hidden conflicts of interest, even coercion of public defenders. Whitlow wasn't just a bad apple. He was rotting the whole orchard. The judge banged the gavel. "Let's proceed. State versus Randall Deeks. Third offense. Petty theft. Though I doubt anything's petty when it keeps happening every 6 months." A teenager shuffled to the defense table. 17, maybe. Dark-skinned, skinny, his eyes flitting everywhere but forward. Marcus had seen that look before. It was the look of someone who knew the ending before the story began. Granger read the charges, her voice dry, robotic. The defendant was caught on camera taking snack items from a 7-Eleven store. Value estimated at $38.19. Whitlow sighed theatrically. "Is this what our tax dollars go toward? $38 of beef jerky and energy drinks." Marcus watched Randall. The boy wasn't even pretending to care. He just stood there, like a man waiting to be buried. "Your Honor," the public defender began, barely above a whisper. The defendant hadn't eaten in 2 days. His school lunch account. "Save it," Whitlow snapped. "We'll feed him in county." Laughter again. Louder this time. And that was it. No consideration. No options. No questions. Marcus had seen enough. His hand subtly pressed the button on the wire sewn into the lining of his mail satchel. In D.C., real-time audio was now streaming. When Whitlow delivered the sentence 6 months in juvenile detention with mandatory adult transition, Review Marcus knew the boy would be lost to the system forever. Over $38. He stood up. "Your Honor," he said. Whitlow looked annoyed. "Mr. Hale, sit down or I'll have you removed. I'd like to request the court's indulgence." I have information pertinent to this proceeding. Granger's eyes snapped up. Her hand shifted toward her briefcase code, for is this it? Whitlow chuckled. Oh, now the mailman wants to play lawyer. The courtroom went quiet. Marcus unzipped his satchel and pulled out his badge. The gold crest of the United States Department of Justice caught the light. Gasps spread like fire. I'm Special Investigator Marcus Hale with the DOJ Civil Rights Division. This court is now part of an active federal investigation into judicial misconduct, systemic bias, and abuse of power under your jurisdiction, Your Honor. Whitlow's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Marcus turned toward the stunned courtroom. For the record, every word of this morning's hearing has been recorded and transmitted to federal agents currently stationed outside. The doors opened. 2 U.S. Marshals stepped in. Gasps turned to whispers, then silence. Whitlow stood. This is outrageous. I have served this court for 32 years. Exactly, Marcus interrupted. 32 years of fear, favoritism, and racism disguised as justice. Today it ends. As the marshals approached the bench, Whitlow backed up like the gavel could save him. It couldn't. In the back, Randall Deeks raised his head for the first time and smiled. Whitlow's laugh died in his throat as the marshals flanked him, firm but not rough like men who'd done this before. His robe rustled as he raised his arms slightly, a last grasp at dignity. This is a mistake, he said, voice hoarse. This is my courtroom. I demand to speak to my attorney. One of the marshals, a tall woman with a no-nonsense jawline and the glint of a service pistol, replied coolly. You'll have your phone call, but for now, you're under federal detainment pending investigation. Hands, please. The judge's hands trembled as he extended them. A gasp rippled through the courtroom when the cuffs clicked. No one moved. Marcus stepped aside, watching as Whitlow was led out not like a king, but like any other man. He looked to Granger. She was pale, but nodded, sliding the slim USB stick from her briefcase in her laptop. Recording's clean, she whispered. No dead audio. We got everything. Randall Deeks was still standing at the defense table, eyes wide. So I'm not going to jail? Marcus walked over slowly, crouching to the boy's level. Not today. You're going home, but you will have to help use if you're willing. Randall hesitated, then nodded. By the time the courtroom emptied, the entire courthouse was buzzing. Cell phones out, texts flying, reporters beginning to swarm. The big reveal wouldn't hit the airwaves for another hour. DOJ's press team would time it with a U.S. Attorney's official statement, but Marcus didn't need the news to tell him what he already knew. Whitlow was just the first domino. 2 floors above, in a sealed conference room lined with bulletproof glass, Marcus and Granger regrouped. Agents had already begun taking control of the judge's office, his chambers, even his home. Subpoenas were flying. Granger poured them both coffee, her hands still shaking slightly. You ever done anything that ballsy before? Only once, Marcus said. Got a senator kicked off the Judiciary Committee for bribing a parole board. But this is different. Granger took a sip. He really thought you were a mailman. Marcus gave her a thin smile. Most of them do. That's the point. She sat back. The way he looked at you, like you were a joke. Even I almost believed it. He didn't answer right away. He was watching the courthouse across the street through the blinds, watching the people coming out. Lawyers, janitors, bailiffs. Black, white, brown. Some smiling, some stunned. There's a sickness, he said, a rot that hides under robes and behind benches. It's easy to miss unless you live with it every damn day. Granger nodded. We've got statements coming in from 6 public defenders, all of them willing to testify. You blew the lid off something real. And it's not just Whitlow, Marcus said. He's the face, but the system let him thrive. At that, his phone buzzed. A secure line. He answered it with a curt hail. "Good work," came the voice on the other end. Deputy Director Ainsley, his superior in Washington. "Santa Dorada's just the tip. We've traced links from Whitlow's sentencing records to 2 real estate investment firms. You were right. Asset seizures on defaulted bail. Terms were being funneled to shell companies. We're opening phase 2. Marcus leaned against the window. "Who's the target?" There was a pause. "Judge Naomi Lawton. Sacramento. She's cleaner on paper, but has ties to Whitlow going back 20 years. Same clerks. Same law school. Same campaign donors." Marcus exhaled slowly. "So we're going north. We'll send the files by morning. Rest up tonight. You earn it." The line went dead. Granger looked up. "More judges." He nodded. "And more masks." That night, Marcus didn't go home. Instead, he drove to a quiet, low-income neighborhood in West Santa Dorada. Streets cracked, streetlights dim, corner stores with bars on the windows. He parked in front of a small stucco house with peeling paint and a broken mailbox. An elderly black woman sat on the porch, crocheting. She looked up and smiled as he approached. "Evening, Miss Delilah," Marcus said. "Evening, Marcus," she replied. "Heard you made a little noise downtown today." "You could say that." She gestured to the seat next to her. "You hungry? I could eat." Inside, the house smelled of cornbread and greens. Old jazz played softly on a crackling speaker. Marcus hadn't been back here in months too risky. But Miss Delilah had raised him since he was 9. She knew who he really was, even when the world didn't. They ate in silence for a while, the comfort of home washing away the courtroom's tension. "Was it worth it?" she asked finally. Marcus didn't answer right away. "One boy didn't go to jail today. That's worth something." But he looked down at his plate. "There's always another Whitlow. And people like Randall, they get crushed every day. Most don't get lucky." Delilah reached over and placed a wrinkled hand on his. "You keep doing what you're doing, baby," she said softly. "Make it count." He nodded. "I will." When he left, it was past midnight. He sat in his car for a moment, staring at the empty streets, wondering how many other Randalls lived in those buildings, invisible and unheard. The next morning, Phase 2 began. Granger and Marcus reviewed files for Judge Lawton. Unlike Whitlow, she was sophisticated. No open racism, no recorded slurs. But her sentences for Black and Latino defendants were 62% harsher on average. She had presided over 400 bail forfeiture cases, most resulting in property seizures, and her husband and paper-owned stakes in a private investment firm that had recently acquired over a dozen foreclosed properties. Marcus knew the pattern. Same game, fancier packaging. He'd go in as a court records technician, this time another uniform, another forgettable black man shuffling paper while the real decisions happened above his head. He memorized the layout of the Sacramento courthouse, the routines of Lawton's clerks, the brands of coffee they liked, the social media of her staffers. Everything mattered. By the end of the week, he was in. The judge was elegant, composed, deadly. Her courtroom was a theater, and she ruled it like a queen, benevolent in tone, merciless in outcome. Her smile was warm even when she handed down 20-year sentences for nonviolent charges. Marcus observed everything. She was careful. No jokes, no outbursts. But once, while reviewing a case of a homeless black veteran caught shoplifting allergy medication, she paused. "What a shame," she said softly. "Society is allergic to discipline these days." A moment later, she sentenced him to 4 years. That was all he needed. It wasn't what she said. It was what it meant. Cold calculation hiding behind a silk curtain. He recorded it all. By the time the DOJ issued its second wave of subpoenas, Lawton's entire clerical chain was under audit. Emails surfaced, quiet bribes disguised as retainer gifts. The house of cards shook. But unlike Whitlow, Lawton didn't go quietly. When the agents came for her, she called a press conference, stood tall in front of cameras. "This is political," she said. "I have always ruled with fairness and integrity. I will not be bullied." Marcus watched from the back row and smiled. He knew the truth would take time. Justice always did, but it was coming, and he wasn't done yet. The fallout from Judge Lawton's exposure rippled across the state like an earthquake. Sacramento's media exploded with the story. Second judge and DOJ sting-tied to racial sentencing bias. Headlines debated everything from judicial accountability to the ethics of undercover federal operations. Some called Marcus a hero. Others accused him of undermining the judicial system. He ignored both. His mission wasn't about headlines. It was about names. Like the name etched into his memory since he was 13, Jalen Simmons' cousin, sentenced by a smug-faced judge to 5 years for a crime he didn't commit. Jalen never made it out of prison. Caught in a fight he didn't start. A fractured skull. No one was ever charged. Marcus had joined the Justice Department because of Jalen. Every file he cracked, every courtroom he infiltrated, every corrupt robe he pulled off that was for him. After Sacramento, Operation Paper Veil was no longer a whisper. It had become a war. By mid-April, the DOJ's task force had quietly expanded into Southern California, Arizona, and Nevada. Marcus was now leading a 3-person embedded team. Himself, ADA Granger, and a cyber ops specialist named Darnell Yu, a Korean-American tech wizard with a quiet voice and eyes that never stopped scanning. Their next target, Judge Paul Arnett, presiding over Riverside County. No public scandals, no smoking gun racism, but data flagged him after a routine sweep of sentencing algorithms. Black defendants under his bench were 78% more likely to be denied parole recommendations. And Arnett had a pattern of citing insufficient remorse. During parole reviews, language often traced to defendants who never even had the chance to speak. The courthouse in Riverside was a modernist glass building that tried to look open, transparent, ironic, given what lay beneath. Marcus entered as an IT contractor, a role Darnell had fabricated with exquisite detail, complete with badge, backdated clearance, and a repair order for courtroom AV anomalies. The first time he entered Arnett's chambers, Marcus recognized the scent: cologne, varnished wood, power. The judge was precise. Every pen aligned, every paper clipped just so. A man who believed the world should function like his desk quarterly, obedient, color-coded. On Marcus's third day, he witnessed it. A case: Tremaine Foster, 25, black, father of one, accused of possession with intent to distribute. No priors. Arrested at a traffic stop. No drugs found on him, only in the trunk of the rental car he had picked up 2 hours earlier. Prosecution's case was weak. Even Granger, planted as a junior DA on the docket, was instructed to push for dismissal. But Arnett wasn't having it. "This case smells like deception," he said during the hearing. "The type of deception I've come to expect from certain elements." Marcus turned slowly toward the bench. Did he really just say that? "Objection, Your Honor," Granger said, steady. "Overruled," Arnett replied sharply. "We'll proceed to full trial. Bail is set at $250,000. Gasps. Even the stenographer looked up. Marcus leaned forward and clicked his pen 3 times. That was the signal to Darnell, monitoring from outside, to flag the audio timestamp. Arnett moved on without missing a beat. In less than 10 minutes, he'd upended a man's life. And he wasn't done. The team spent the next 3 weeks collecting evidence, edited transcripts, case delays that mysteriously aligned with specific election donation cycles, ex parte meetings with private prison representatives. Arnett wasn't loud like Whitlow or elegant like Lawton. He was surgical. and that made him dangerous. When Marcus presented the case to the DOJ task force leader, the reaction was swift: prepare for indictment. But Marcus hesitated. Not yet, he told them. He's a keystone. We bring him down now. We lose the bigger picture. Granger agreed. We think Arnett's one of 5 judges being courted for investment shares in a new detention center project in Kern County. Privately owned, Darnell added, and funded by companies linked to real estate seizures and juvenile detention lobbying groups. The DOJ greenlit further surveillance. Marcus embedded deeper. One night, after a particularly brutal sentencing hearing, Marcus lingered near the elevators as Arnett exited chambers. He was talking to an older white man in a tailored suit, a gold pen clipped to his lapel. Marcus made sure they passed close enough to hear. Just remember, Paul, the man said, we're not running a charity. Every delay costs money. Get them in, process them, and move on. Arnett nodded like a student. I understand. Efficiency above all. That was it. The chain. The money. Marcus followed the man outside, snapped a picture of his license plate, and handed it to Darnell. Within 48 hours, they had a name: Stephen Halloran, CEO of Apex Civic Ventures, a company notorious for lobbying conservative judges and funding pro-incarceration PACs. Halloran's firm had just purchased land in Kern County, perfect for a new detention center. Back in L.A., DOJ officials widened the net. They weren't just targeting judges anymore. They were going after a machine. A month later, Marcus stood in a federal courtroom, not undercover, not in disguise, but in a suit and tie, flanked by prosecutors and agents. Before him stood Judge Paul Arnett, his lawyer frantically flipping through papers. The indictment included judicial misconduct, conspiracy to defraud the federal government, racially motivated sentencing discrimination, accepting bribes in the form of political campaign donations. Marcus watched Arnett's face as each count was read. Still precise, still trying to control the chaos. But the courtroom didn't belong to him anymore. Outside, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. The DOJ's operation had become national news. 3 judges, 1 CEO, dozens of pending disciplinary actions. The phrase systemic judicial racism was now on the front page of the New York Times. Back in his apartment that night, Marcus finally sat alone. The silence pressed heavy on him. His phone buzzed with messages he ignored. Congratulations from agents, media requests, letters from victims. But one message made him pause. It was a voice note from Tremaine Foster. Mr. Hale, I don't know what to say. I got my daughter back today. I didn't think I'd ever see her outside prison glass again. You saved me. Thank you. From both of us. Marcus closed his eyes. That night, he dreamed of Jalen, not the broken version in prison. The kid who danced barefoot in the kitchen to Marvin Gaye while their grandmother cooked. The one who believed people were good. Marcus hoped he was watching, because this was only the beginning. The courtroom in downtown Los Angeles was packed, standing room only. Civil rights attorneys, reporters, law students, retired judges, even off-duty officers filled the benches, shoulder to shoulder. But Marcus Hale didn't notice them. He had his eyes fixed on the man seated just ahead, Stephen Halloran, the mastermind, the kingmaker, the silent partner behind nearly every corrupted courthouse they'd uncovered. Halloran sat stiffly, his suit still perfectly creased, but the lines around his mouth had deepened. His fingers trembled ever so slightly as his attorney leaned in to whisper. From a distance, he looked composed, but Marcus knew fear when he saw it. Final witness? The federal prosecutor asked. Marcus stood. He walked to the witness stand and measured steps, unhurried, not performing, just carrying the weight of truth with him. He raised his right hand, took the oath, and faced the court. State your name and occupation, the prosecutor said. Marcus Hale, investigator, U.S. Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. The prosecutor paused, then asked, "Tell us how this started." Marcus looked straight ahead. "I was assigned to investigate reports of racial bias in California's judicial system. There were patterns unexplained, sentencing gaps, asset seizures disproportionately affecting black families, juvenile convictions inflated without cause. But we didn't have names. We didn't have proof. So I went in." "You went undercover?" "Yes. As a postal worker, as an IT technician, as a court document analyst. I entered courthouses not as an agent, but as someone no one noticed. That was the point." The courtroom held its breath. "What did you find?" "I found that racism doesn't always shout. Sometimes it speaks in polite tones, wears robes, hides behind legal codes and obscure statutes. But it leaves fingerprints on files, on lives, on the futures of people who never had a chance." The defense attorney stood, objecting to editorializing, but the Judhea federal judge, unaffiliated with any prior case, overruled. Marcus continued, "I watched Judge Kenneth Whitlow mock a teenage defendant's hunger like it was comedy. I watched Judge Naomi Lawton deliver life-altering sentences with a smile. I watched Judge Paul Arnett treat human beings like revenue streams. And I uncovered the thread tying them together: Stephen Halloran." He turned, slowly, to face Halloran directly. "You built a system where poverty was profitable, where incarceration wasn't just a site, was investment. And the people you targeted didn't have PR teams. It didn't make headlines. They just disappeared." Gasps echoed. Halloran looked away. Marcus turned back to the jury. "I didn't do this alone. Prosecutor Layla Granger stood beside me. Analyst Darnell, you tracked every digital footprint. But the truth? The real credit belongs to the people who kept showing up to court even when they knew the game was rigged. The kids, the single mothers, the families who sold furniture to make bail. They never stopped fighting." The prosecutor nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Hale. No further questions." As Marcus stepped down, applause threatened to break the courtroom rules. The judge raised a hand, quieting them. But even he couldn't stop the feeling in the room that something bigger than a verdict was unfolding. Over the next week, the prosecution laid out a damning case. Emails, financial records, whistleblower testimony. Everything pointed to Halloran's Empiria criminal enterprise disguised as judicial efficiency. When the verdict came back, guilty on all counts, there was no celebration, just silence, the kind that comes when justice finally breathes again. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Marcus. Microphones reached for him like hands. But he stepped back, raised one palm, and simply said, "This is not about me. This is about every life that was dismissed, discounted, and destroyed. The fight's not over." He walked past the cameras, past the crowds, and into the next chapter. 3 months later, Marcus stood in front of a congressional subcommittee in Washington, D.C. The DOJ had asked him to deliver a report. Instead, he delivered a warning. "Accountability is not a one-time event," he said. "It's a culture. We need civilian oversight in courtrooms. We need data transparency. We need to stop pretending the system polices itself." A representative asked, "What would you say to those who believe your operation undermined trust in our judges?" Marcus didn't blink. "I'd say trust isn't built by silence. It's built by truth. And if any judge fears exposure, they were never worthy of the bench to begin with." His words made headlines again. But Marcus didn't care. He returned to California no longer undercover, but not public either. He slipped into schools to talk to students, met with exonerees, consulted quietly on police reform panels, refused interviews, declined awards. He just worked. One afternoon, He visited Randall, Deeks the boy from the beginning. Randall was now 19, enrolled at a community college studying criminal justice. "I want to be like you," he told Marcus. Marcus smiled. "No, Randall, be better than me." They sat in a public park. Kids played nearby. The sun broke through the clouds. "I used to think justice was a building," Randall said. "But I guess it's more like a fight." Marcus nodded. "And you gotta wake up every day willing to throw the first punch." As the sun began to set, Marcus stood, offered Randall a handshake, but Randall pulled him into a hug. "Thank you for seeing me," he whispered. "For seeing all of us." Marcus didn't say anything. He didn't have to, because justice had finally spoken. And this time it looked like them. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.